All right, I think we're live. Can you guys see me and hear me okay? All right, Anthony says yes. Hopefully that's in response to my feed here. Anybody else? Yep. Okay. All right, cool. Awesome, guys. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining. So today we're going to be taking a deep look at the true sidereal charts. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to read your own chart in detail and hopefully as well as others. So for those of you who are interested in reading others' charts, by the end of this, you should be able to. So I'm thinking this will be about an hour or two, depending on how fast we go through this. So the way we're going to set this up is we're going to first take a look at each segment of the chart. And then once we've looked at a particular segment of the chart, then we will open up for questions and answers. So we'll break it down. We'll cover one aspect, one part of the chart. I'll open up the Q&A. And that way I can, focus on the lesson while I'm showing it, and then I can take a break and take a look at the chat. Okay? So so if you guys wouldn't mind, let me know where you're from. I see Christina's here, Suzanne, Anthony, Karen, Marike. Let me know where you guys are at where you guys are at in the world. And we'll get started here. Probably wait a little bit for some more viewers to come in. Quite a few, actually. Got about 35 viewers. Pretty good. Yeah, this is only for the MTZ insiders. So, not too many people involved here, but I'm really glad you guys made it. 40 viewers. All right, cool. So for those of you that are here while we wait for everybody else, the first thing we're going to do is make sure we have each of our charts. A lot of you probably already have your charts, but if you don't, I'm going to go ahead and paste the link for doing so. All right, so in the chat, I have put a link to the Sidereal birth chart calculator. If you don't already have your chart, then definitely click that link and that will pull up your chart. If you want to take an extra step, you can right click on the chart and then you'll be able to save it as an image file and then open it as an image file if you'd like, or if you just simply want to just use the site, you can see the chart. All right, so let's see where everyone's from. So we have Christina, Wisconsin. All right. Jedi Master, yeah. One day I will be. Houston, Texas, Florida, Matthias. All right, Matthias, good to have you. From Mexico, Merida. We have Netherlands, Texas, Ontario, Canada, Denmark, Indiana, Belgium. All right, a lot from Europe. Germany, Copenhagen. Yeah, I'm over in Portugal right now, so we're pretty close there on the same time zone. Germany, 6 p.m. It's 5 p.m. over here in Portugal. We have Georgia, Connecticut. We have Perth. All right, Australia. It's late for Australians. Glad you could make it. Washington State. All right, awesome. Washington State's awesome. Beautiful. Southern Oregon as well. All right. All right, guys, so there's that link. Let me know if you have any questions about typing in your birth details in the calculator, but it's pretty straightforward. I'll go through it here. So basically, you're going to type in your name up here for step 1. Then you're going to type in your year of birth, your month of birth, and day of birth. And then over here, you're going to put in your time. If you don't know your time, then click this link or this little checkbox here, and that's going to set the sun around the ascendant, which will be the most accurate chart for you. So name, date and time, and then down here for locale, just click find place from atlas. And that's going to be the simplest way of doing this, and then you'll be able to type in whatever your location is. So it'll have to be a city. So hope I didn't lose you guys. Okay, I think I lost you there for a second. So I have this thing where whenever I click the control key, it takes me to the intro that I use in my weekly videos. So I don't know how much of that just got cut out. But basically, if you're just joining us, make sure you click this link that I've pasted that's highlighted, and you'll be able to get your true sidereal chart. All right, so if you guys wouldn't mind, let me know in the chat if you're all ready, if everyone's got your charts ready to go. And remind me not to click the control key, because then it will go to the intro again. So let me know if y'all are ready, or if anyone needs more time, just let me know. Is this recorded? Yeah, it should be. So I'm not sure if I'm going to republish it, because I was thinking I might do snippets with it. But if I do republish it, I'll definitely send out an email to the newsletter list. Marika has a question. How can you fix this though? Is to copy the degrees. When you get back to the chart, you fill in your details and fill in the degrees. No. So yeah, don't fill it in manually. So it may have cut out when I was explaining this. So basically what you want to do is you want to just type in your name, type in your birth details in terms of date and time, and then click Find Place from Atlas. This is very important. Click this, Find Place from Atlas. And then from there you'll be able to type in your location. So if we do no, it did it again. Okay, that's odd, but I think you guys get it. I think it, yeah, it just cut out again. Sorry for the constant intro, everybody. All right, so let's get started. Yeah, click find place from Atlas. Find place from Atlas. Yeah, for some reason, whenever I don't know if I was clicking the control key. That's what's causing the intro to pop up. Yeah, I do use control because it's easy whenever I'm recording the video. It's right there. So I don't have to look down and go to the intro. I can just go to the intro, hit control. It's very easy to click. All right. Is everyone ready? So I have a lot of yeses. Anyone not ready? One more link I do want to send you guys. Oh, I see what it is. It's whenever I copy. That's what it was. Okay. So I also sent another link, a second link. And this is going to be some additional resources. Okay, the one I just sent. It's going to look like this page here called PDF resources. All right, so it's not required for this, but for those that want PDFs on what the signs mean, what the planets mean, what the houses mean, aspects, these are all PDFs here you can download. So that's the latest link that I just sent. I'm going to send the chart calculator one more time and just see if there's any final questions, and then we'll get started. Yeah, we'll discuss a fucus for sure. Yeah, if it disappears, Marika, if it disappears, just scroll up. Yeah, don't type in your place manually. Type in find place from Atlas. Okay. Looks like everyone, for the most part, is ready. If not, anything you learned here, you can always take with you because we're going to have a sample chart. All right, so I'm not going to be looking at the chat right now. Again, so we're going to break this down. We're going to do one segment of birth chart analysis. Then I'm going to open up for Q&A. So if you have a question, just save it for the Q&A. Then we'll go back to another segment of the chart. Then we'll open up Q&A, segments, Q&A like this. And that way I can focus on each thing at a time here. All right, so first things first, the most basic fundamentals. This is probably going to be a recap. This earlier part will probably be a recap for a lot of you. But it's important to understand the very, very fundamentals of what we're looking at here. Now, what you're looking at in this chart is that everything that's in the top half of the chart is essentially the visible sky at the time of your birth. Everything that's at the bottom was not visible, so beneath the horizon, essentially. The ascendant, this darker line here right at the beginning of the first house, this is the eastern horizon. So this is what is rising. So in Matthew's chart, for example, Pluto was rising in the eastern horizon during his time of birth in this example chart. Everything opposite that, of course, is the western horizon. So this is everything setting. So all the charts, they're not moving in the birth chart, but if they were, they would be cycling around like this in the sky. The planets do move counterclockwise, but in the rotation of the Earth or in the rotation of the sky, however you see that, everything is moving clockwise around like this. So Pluto was rising. Then later in the day, On Matthias's birthday, Pluto was at the top of the sky, and then it set. So all the constellations and all the planets that are at the top of the chart are the visible, okay, and everything that's below is the bottom. And that's basically what you're looking at in the chart. You've got these houses, the 1, 2, 3, 4. These never change. These are in the same location for everybody. The first house always starts with the ascendant, then second house, then third house, fourth, fifth, always in this order. The first to the sixth house are always the bottom of the sky. The 7th through the 12th house are always the top of the sky. What does change are the constellations and the planets. So these are the things that are moving in the sky, right? So like we were saying with Pluto in Scorpio was rising. Midday would be at the highest part of the sky along the ecliptic, and then it would set by, nightfall and then be underneath during the nighttime. So that's basically what you're looking at in a chart, because a lot of people get confused and like, what am I looking at here? It's just a wheel with a bunch of numbers and a bunch of symbols. These things are the planets. This is Pluto, Chiron right here, North Node, Mars, and the Moon. And then so forth and so on. And this outer wheel here is the constellation. Scorpio was rising during Matthias's birthday. This is Libra, Scorpio, Leo. Now the symbols, we're going to cover those. But if you do want to use that PDF resource that I linked to, those are on there as well. Okay. But the symbols will go through here one by one once we cover them and describe what all this means in the simplest way of approaching a chart. These lines in the middle are basically, you can pretty much ignore them in the sense that they're not actually visible things in the sky. They're basically just showing you the angular relationship between planets in the chart. And they can add a lot of useful information, but for the most part, it's good to just kind of start with the basics. So what are the basics? Planet, house, and sign. And whatever that combination is, it's usually 3 combinations, right? You have a planet and a house and then a sign. From that 3 combination, you have an interpretation. And that's what we're going to be interpreting. All right. So any questions about that topic? Just the basics of what a birth chart is in the most fundamental sense. Marike, there's a bug. There shouldn't be. It's working fine for me. A lot of people use it on a daily basis. Oh, thank you, Sula. You're welcome, Karen. Thank you. Okay, let me link the PDFs one more time here. So these are the PDFs. It's not required, but it can give you some additional information there. All right, so let me know if you guys have any questions about that as I go to the next topic, and then I'll come back to them in the next topic so we can keep the ball moving. All right, so now the actual interpretation. You're looking at this chart, you're like, what the heck, all these symbols, where do I start? What do I do with all of this? So to simplify things, it's important to know what is the most important thing to look at in the chart. What can you spend the least amount of time on and get the maximum amount of information, right? It's kind of like that 80-20 rule. And for those of you who don't know, so 80-20 is basically like in a situation, usually 20% of the effort or energy you put into something actually results in 80% of the results. And the same thing can be applied to astrology. There's about 20% of this chart that's going to show you 80% of the person's personality and the person's overall life experiences. And those are what I like to call the big 3. The sun, the moon and the rising sign with the chart ruler, which we'll get to. Sun, moon, rising sign, the big three. Why are these important? Well, if you look at the sky, you'll see that the sun and moon are the most visible and largest bodies in the sky. So therefore, they represent the most of our personality and of our life experiences. Planets show the personality and the life experiences. Why is the rising sign important? It's the most symbolic representation of who you're destined to become more of. You know, the ancients used to look to the eastern horizon when someone was born, and they would say, okay, this person is meant to become a doctor or a healer or, priest or, whatever it was. Based on the rising sign, this is kind of who you're destined to become more of and really important qualities to develop. All right, so sun, moon, rising sign. The symbol for the sun is here. It looks like the sun. It's a circle with a dot in the middle. Let me go ahead and make this larger for those of you who may be on a smaller screen. So here's the sun. It's the orange symbol, circle with a dot in the middle. This is the moon, looks like the moon, blue symbol. And the rising sign again is always to the very left where it says ascendant. Actually, this isn't the best chart to use. Hold on a sec. Now this is going to be covering up the moon over here. Actually, let me just make it a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, so what is the sun? What is the moon? What is the rising sign? What do they represent in the personality and the life experiences? Well, the sun is our form of self-expression. You can think of it as the outer focus onto the world. It is the sun. It's shining the light of consciousness. It's everything you see in your outer external environment and everything that's illuminated for you and everything you focus on. And then it's also the fire within, the sun, which is how we express ourselves. And it's our more outer personality. So it's all the outer yang type of energy, fire. The moon is the inward, the feminine, the receptive. It's our inner personality. It's the side that comes through more at home and in our personal lives and our more emotional, connective lives when we're feeling emotionally secure and protective or protected. The moon can also be where we feel ups and downs emotionally because the moon is ever changing, just like the tides. It's water energy. So it can be areas of insecurities or doubts, but it's a very good strength, even though there might be doubts about it. It's about recognizing that there are strengths there, but they're more private, again, more private side, more inward side, more yin energy. Very important, equally as important in the sun. We always hear in the West, they put a lot of focus on the sun. In the East, they put more focus on the moon, but really at the end of the day, they're both equally as important. And you can see this because they're both the same size in the sky, which is interesting, even though their distances, scientifically speaking, are much farther from, very different from each other. So sun outer, both personality and focus. Moon inner, both attunement, inner attunement, and inner personality. And then, like I said, the rising sign isn't a planet, so it doesn't represent the personality. It represents what life's helping us develop. Okay, so I'm going to open up for some questions here and take a look. The degrees, yeah, so Christina, I personally don't use degrees with True Sidereal because there's really no reason to. The main reason we use degrees in other forms of astrology is because we need to relate two planets to each other. So if something's at, say, 2 degrees of Leo, then we'll know there's, a square when something's at 2 degrees of Taurus. But because we're using the actual size of the constellations, the degrees completely lose relevance because degrees are only useful if everything's an even 30 degrees, right? Now you can still use degrees once there's enough people using sidereal, and in which case we could start to use the degrees to say, okay, maybe there's a star over here at this degree, or maybe this degree means something, but in this early stage of true sidereal, there's really no point until there's some sort of body of knowledge to describe what each of the degrees mean in the constellation. But other than that, that's why I don't use degrees yet with true sidereal. So Kelsey, something I struggle with is the interaction between the significator of the house and the personal ruler of the house. Yeah, okay, so we'll get to the rulers. We'll get to that next. We're going to start with just the most fundamentals so we're all on the same page. Okay, I think we're good. Cool. So let's move on. So, what house is the sun in? What sign is the sun in? What house is the moon in? What sign is the moon in? Right? This is where we start to get our interpretations. So, first of all, what is the difference between a house and a sign? What is a house? Well, a house, again, the numeric values that don't change, represent areas of the sky. Right? We were talking about them as everything 7th through 12th house is the top of the sky, right? And 1 through 6 is the bottom. They represent areas of the sky. Therefore, they represent areas of life. Areas of life. We'll cover these, but the first house is self. The second house is values. The third house is communications, so forth and so on. So areas of life. Signs are the qualities of life. Qualities. When they're talking about people's sun signs and it's like, oh, they have the quality of this, it's always a sort of descriptive, almost like a, what do you call it in linguistics? You call it an adjective, something that describes something. Signs are like the adjective, it's describing the qualities. So Aries are direct, independent, assertive. Those aren't things, those aren't areas of life like self and identity and goals and needs. These are things, these are the houses. The signs is the qualities, assertive, direct, independent. With Pisces, receptive, intuitive. So the signs is the qualities and how we go about expressing certain energy, because it's the adjective. And the house itself is the what, the area of life that we're talking about. So let's start with everyone's sun. So locate where the sun is in your chart, and let's start by analyzing the house and sign and what all the houses and sign means. Now, obviously, it can take years to really fully understand what all 12 of these houses mean and what all 13 of these signs mean. But there's a very simple way to analyze it so that you can start to build upon your own framework based on the fundamentals of what they mean. So let's start with the houses. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Okay. Now I want to bring your attention, so we're going to go through the interpretations of what all the houses mean in the most basic fundamental sense so that you can read any chart, including your own. Because all of you are going to have your sun in different parts of the chart. So we're going to cover the fundamentals so you can tie it all together. I want to bring your attention here to what are called the cardinal houses, or if you want to be technical, it's the angular houses. Okay? And this is the 4 corners of the chart. The first house, the 7th house, the 4th house, and the 10th house. They're all the ones that start with the dark lines on all 4 corners of the chart. 1, 7, 4, 10. Let's just simplify and call it the angular houses. Angular means, in this sense, the fundamentals of life. The first house is self. Can't have anything without sense of self and identity. The 7th house, opposite that, is relationships. Relationships. Crucial part of life. This is the axes of interpersonal stuff, self and other, 1st and 7th. Then you have the 4th house, the fundamentals of the whole chart, the foundation of the chart, the bottom of the chart. Rules things like home, family, our past, our roots, our foundations. Home is very common with the 4th. What can we have if we don't have good home and good health? Both things that are associated with the 4th. Foundations, the temples of life. And then you have the 10th house, which is achievement, success, public stuff, career stuff, out in the world, achievements, career, public life. And this is the axis of private life, home, public life, let's just simplify and call it career or achievements. The 4 pillars of the chart, 4 pillars of life. If you have these 4 strengthened, if you can develop these 4 in your chart, that's going to make it a whole lot easier to cultivate the other areas of your life. So, angular, fundamental areas of life. Now we're going to talk about what are the fixed houses, or more accurately, the succedent houses, but you can just simplify and call it the fixed houses. And this also forms a square. And it's all of the houses that are in between the lines. You have your 2nd house, your 5th house, your 8th house, and your 11th house. In Matthias's chart, you can see there's what's called a grand cross here. The squares are connecting all of his succedent, or let's simplify and call it fixed, his fixed houses. Now, these are the houses of values, The 2nd house, material values, personal values, material values. The 8th house, others values, so others resources, and also the deeper values. So this is the axis of values, 2nd house material, 8th house deeper, things like healing, life and death, deeper emotional needs, interdependency. It's also the axis of dependency, of self-reliance of the 2nd house, again, personal values, and the 8th house is dependent types of things, which is interpersonal values, shared resources, values. The 5th and 11th can also be called values because, again, they are the fixed. But the values is a little bit difficult to describe it because the 5th house is what you might call your passion values. So it's self-expression, it's the things we enjoy in life, our hobbies, our interests, things we love, people we love. This is all 5th house. Passion values. And then the 11th house is future values, collective matters, the world, global things, future values, or collective values. So again, fixed houses are the value houses. And then lastly, since we're going in this square fashion, what we have here is the cadent houses. Cadent, that's the technical term. So let's just stick with the technical term there in terms of cadent. And so these are the flexible things, the things that create more flexibility in our life. Okay? So the 3rd house deals with communication. Well, let's just simplify it even more. Information. Simply put, information. 3rd house, information. Learning, reading, writing, communication, synergizing information, sharing information. 3rd house. Then you have the 9th house, which is higher, you could say information, but more like higher wisdom. Things that create more flexibility by expanding our perception. The abstract realms, it rules things like astrology, philosophy, higher knowledge, higher wisdom, also travel, things that expand our perception. So right side of the brain stuff. The 3rd house will be left side of the brain, the 9th house will be right side of the brain. All to create more flexibility. When we have more information, we're more flexible. We're willing to have more experiences to expand our horizons, we're more flexible. And then you have the 6th house and the 12th house. Hang on one second, I'm just going to take a couple notes. Just so I don't forget. And by the way, the non-technical term for these three, so for these four, the 3, 9, 6, and 12, cadent is the technical term, but mutable is probably the easier one to remember, because once we get to the signs, we're going to notice a pattern there. But it's not so important what they're called, but just so you know what we're talking about. Okay, so where were we? 6th and 12th. Yeah, so the other, let's just call it the mutable houses. You have the 6th house, which is about creating structure and foundations. This is our routines, day-to-day activities, habits. How does that create more flexibility? Well, when you have a habit, you're way more flexible. You can almost just not even think. You can just do. And that's what the 6th represents. Day-to-day doing energy, fixing, improving, refining, automatic. So that creates more flexibility in our life. The 12th house flexibility is surrendering, letting go. It's the last house of the chart. It deals with that Pisces energy of surrender and trust. That's the 12th. So again, what you have here with your mutable houses is your 3rd, your 9th, your 6th, and your 12th. So now, no matter what house it is, as long as you remember, whether it's cardinal, fixed, or mutable, you've already got information you can use. Tons of information. And it's all in a pattern. And it goes in the pattern of what we just did. And it just goes around the whole chart. 1st house, cardinal. 2nd house, fixed. 3rd house, mutable. And so forth. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. Cardinal, fixed, mutable. Cardinal always starts. Fixed is always in the middle. Mutable ends it. In each of the 4 quadrants of the chart. It's all perfect squares. It's all in that pattern. If you get that, then you know if something's in the 10th house, even if you can't remember what the 10th house is about, but you can see by looking at it, oh, that's an angular house, cardinal house. It's the ones that are on the 4 corners. What does that deal with? The foundations of life. Aha. Okay, so this person might be very, let's say, keen on having the foundations of their life met. And that simple interpretation is true for people in the 10th. It's also true for people who have stuff in the 1st, the 4th, and the 7th. But at least you have something to work with there. Now, it's really going to come together once we get to the elements, which are even easier than this, which is going to then really paint a picture. And another example, if you can't remember what the 9th house represents, but you remember that it's that flexible one, the cadent or mutable, these people or whatever's in that area, they need to have flexibility. They need to change. They need to move. If it's in a fixed house, you know that it's about values. They're very keen on their values and very fixed usually because their values are very fixed. So they're pretty fixed on their values. Okay, so it doesn't give you a whole lot to work with, but you'll see how this all comes together. So any questions about, this is all called the modalities, okay? So any questions about the modalities? Let me go through here. And again, the modalities, in the most simplest terms, cardinal, which is the foundational and very pursuant types. They're always pursuing something, cardinal. Then you have fixed, which is the values, and they're fixed. That's a great word for them. And then mutable, which is the one that creates flexibility and change, and they need flexibility and change. Okay. So I'm going to go through some questions. So my sun sign is Gemini, but very close to Cancer. Would I use Gemini or Cancer? Both. If anything is within 3 degrees of another sign, then you do want to consider yourself a blend. it's going to probably lean a little bit closer to whichever sign that it's closest to, and also where there's other planets. So for example, if your sun's in between Gemini and Cancer, but say your Venus and Mercury are in Cancer, that's going to lean more towards Cancer because you're going to have way more energy there. But generally it's a blend. All right. We'll cover the rising sign if that's what you mean, Sanas. We'll cover the rising sign. That's next. So I had a question in case you're able to fit that in later. Is there any significance to having all planets in the span of a certain position? Yes. So these are called your aspect configurations. All right, aspect configurations. And there's a whole, the easiest thing is to literally just go online and type in aspect configurations and you'll see a whole list of them. We're going to cover what the basics of the aspects are. What does it mean when there's a square or a trine? And from that, you should be able to interpret it. But if you want what the whole thing represents, yeah, I would highly recommend Googling it because there's just a ton of them. And if all of your planets are in the same house, that's what's called a stellium. A stellium, S-T-E-L-L-I-U-M, and it represents a blend. So if anyone sees a stellium, which is basically at least 3 planets next to each other, it's a blending of energy. It means all the energy of the planets get blended together. It means that a lot of different aspects of your personality are intertwined with others. And that would depend on what the planets are that are involved. Yeah, stelliums are very important. Are the houses, so great question, Anthony. So are the houses exactly 30 degrees each? In the system that I'm using equal house system. And the reason I use equal house is because it represents the sky. There's other forms of the other different types of house systems. The most popular would be your quadrant house systems like Placidus or Koch. And those are basically dividing the chart up into northeast, south, and west. But north and south aren't always in the highest part of the sky, so it's not the visible sky. Because north could be over here a little bit, or depending on where you are in the, north or southern hemisphere. South could be over there a little bit, right? And so equal is basically the equivalent of going outside and seeing the sky divided up into equal parts. But there's different house systems. I do recommend exploring the different ones, but I think you'll find with true sidereal equal works the best because again, it's the most visible representation. There's also sinus house, which is what Vedics use, which is if everything is in one sign, then it's represented as being in the same house. So there are different ones, and you can use all the different house systems with sidereal. All right, so Karen, luckily I've studied a lot of what you have already put on YouTube. So you know more. Yeah, good. Yep. Happy to hear that. Yep. We're going through the whole thing, so we're all on the same page. Does the place of your birth matter very much? Well, the place of your birth is what's creating your chart. All right, so it's creating your chart. Christina, question, if you have a majority in cadent houses, doesn't that make it more difficult? You always flexible or fixed or cardinal? If you always flexible or fixed or cardinal. Would it be more difficult though? No, not necessarily. You may have more, if what you mean is will you have more difficulty with the fixed or the cardinals? Maybe, yeah. It might be more difficult for you to have those foundations, which are the cardinal, and those fixed values, which is the fixed. But do embrace who you are, because flexible energy, that's what you need, right, as a person. But it would be good to kind of, obviously, for anyone who has too much like if we just, outside of astrology, anyone who's too flexible obviously may need, if they aren't already doing it, implement some grounding or some foundations or something in their life, maybe, but it's not for everybody, right? And that's what the chart's showing, is showing what your unique path is and what your strengths are, and, so anything can be difficult. So can too much in a cadent house, and there's not enough flexibility, for example, or too much in a fixed house, not enough flexibility. What does it mean if a house has no planets? Okay, good question. It just means that that area of life isn't going to be as emphasized, in the sense that it's not a major life experience. There's not going to be any major life experiences for you in those areas. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have the area developed. You certainly will. It's just not a major life lesson. If you've got planets in houses, there's some major life lessons to learn about those houses. Now remember, and that's the same for the signs as well. Now remember that we do have transits. So whenever something is, transiting a certain part of your chart, it is going to activate that house. So at certain time periods, all of your houses will be activated at some point, right? And in those times, it will be important to develop those houses. But in the birth chart, it just means no major life experiences. All right, so Karen, does that include the sun and moon? I'm not sure what you're referencing. If you can ask that question in the context of what I said or what you're referencing, and I'll answer it. All right, journey to home, same house or sign on the stellium. Same house or sign in the stellium. Well, if it's the same house, then that area is very important. If it's the same sign, then that sign's very important. But oftentimes stelliums will go in between houses and signs, and you just want to blend the interpretations of the house and the sign together. Remember, stellium is about blending, whether it's blending of planets, houses, or signs. All right, Conscious Beats, I have all in house 8 through 12 with several houses having 3 or more planets in them. These are stelliums, yes. As long as they're within 10 degrees. So that's each of the lines. The degrees aren't listed, but each of the lines is a degree. So if they're within 10 degrees, it is. That's why we have compasses, right? Right, Christina, yep. Because we don't know where north is. If north was always in the highest part of the sky where the sun is at noon or whatever, that would be too easy. All right, so that's the modalities. So now let's talk about the elements. Now this one's easier, and it's going in the same order as modalities. So the 4 elements everyone should be aware of: fire, earth, air, and water. We use these in astrology. Fire, earth, air, and water. And it goes in that order. Just like modalities, fire. So we're going to go in order from the first house. First house, fire. Second house, earth. Third house, air. Fourth house, water. Repeat. 5th house, fire. 6th house, earth. 7th house, air. 8th house, water. Repeat. Fire, earth, air, water. The elements, or triplicities, because it involves dividing the chart into 3. Because you have 3 sets of 4 with elements, or 4 sets of 3 with the modalities. But what this does is this now distinguishes all of the modalities from each other. What I mean by that is that there is one fire cardinal house, there is one air cardinal, let me go in order. There's one earth cardinal house, there's one air cardinal house, and there's one water cardinal house. So if you know what cardinal means, and you know what the elements mean, boom, that's it. You've got all the interpretations you need from that. You'll have to kind of draw from it, but that's really all you need. Astrology is all drawing from the fundamental elements of life, because these are all the elements of life divided up into the different constellations or houses. And when you have 2 points, then you have a line, right? You can never draw a line. You can never have a direction without 2 points. Now we have 2 points, the modality and the element. Now we can have an interpretation. So again, for the elements, fire, earth, air, water. Repeat. Fire, earth, air, water. 1, fire. 2, earth. 3, air. 4, water. 5, fire. 6, earth. 7, air. 8, water. Repeat. Now, what do they mean? What is fire? This is all very, very intuitive. Fire is passion. Fire is independence. Fire is assertive. Fire is direct. So all of your fire houses, which if you look at the chart, you will see they form what would be a triangle. So remember, the modalities form the square. We talked about, like in Matthew's chart, he's got that square. The elements form triangles because, again, the 3 sets of 4. So the air houses 1, 5, and 9 form a triangle. 1, 5, 9. 1, 5, 9. Fire. The earth houses 2, 6, 10. 2, 6, 10. The air houses 3, 7, 11. 3, 7, 11 are the air houses. The water houses 4, 8, and 12. 4, 8, and 12. Triangles. You can see in Matthew's chart, he's got triangles. Where from? The 8th and the 12th. Why is it a trine? Why is it a triangle? Well, because they're the same element. Same with Saturn over here in the 4th, another trine. You see? Same element. If something's in the same element, it's going to be easier to work with. Right? So back to what they mean. Fire, passion, directness, leadership, independence. Any fire house deals with these things. The first house is independence. The 5th house is about passion. The 9th house is about more of the adventure. But they're all about spirit. They're all about passion. And in fact, you could just say, if you have planets in the 9th house, you're focused, or let's say it's the sun because it's the focus, you're focused on passionate things. You could keep it that simple. Now add the modality. If we were to break it down, we would say the 9th house deals with all things that inspire us, fire, and are flexible. What are things that inspire us, that create more flexibility in life? That's all the 9th house. All the things that inspire us and all the things that create more flexibility in our life. You don't need to memorize what the 9th house is. Just think, what are all the things that inspire us and create more flexibility in our life? From there, you will get all the interpretations of the 9th house. It's travel, adventure, philosophy, the abstract realms, the life path, the freedom, the free spirits, right? The opening of the horizons, the wisdom, the spirituality, right? And passionate about our beliefs. What do our beliefs do? They're ever changing, right? Flexible. All knowledge, information, all this, right? It can be. 9th house can be a bit, firm in its beliefs, but in its best or at least easiest or highest expression, it is open to having new perceptions and new experiences, to expand our perception about things. That's what travel is, right? If you're going to go on an adventure, you better be open to new experiences, which is the flexibility, right? And you better be open to enjoying, like you better have a passion for it to do that, right? Because, especially back in the day, it's dangerous to go on adventures. That's why they're exciting and they're fun. So you see how we did that, combining the elements with the modality. Obviously, the PDFs that I linked to will give you the keywords, and that's great. But this is where I would really focus my attention, is on seeing the pattern in the chart. You don't even have to memorize it. You just have to see the pattern. The only thing you have to memorize is the order. That it goes for the modalities, cardinal, fixed, mutable. That fixed is in the middle, starts with cardinal, ends with mutable. And then the only thing you have to remember for the elements is the order. Fire, earth, air, water. Let's repeat that. Fire, earth, air, water. It just repeats. So we know what fire is. Earth is all things earth. Again, literal, very intuitive. Material things, but nature as well. Work, things we build, things we create with our hands that are, material, formed, physical. and things derived from Earth, Mother Nature. So again, same thing, Earth. So let's say the second house is Earth and fixed, which means values. What are our Earth values? Boom, Earth values, second house. What are Earth values? Resources, food, money, resources, natural, material, and personal resources, second house. You see? And all the Earth houses, 2, 6, and 10, 6. So these are the mutable, which means flexible Earth. This one's a little bit tricky. Because Earth is heavy, mutable is changing. But what are Earth things that create more flexibility in our life? Our routines. Routines. When you have solid routine, you can go out and do things when it's not time, to structure your routine, or when you have good habits, or your work. 6th house is also your work. Things that need to be fixed and improved. 10th house, what is a cardinal thing? Something that we strive towards that is Earth? Career, achievement, success, right? So hopefully this is all coming together. Air houses, 3, 7, 11. The 3rd house is the air house that is changing, it's mutable, perfect. Okay, so what is air? Air deals with information. Let's put it simply, it's more like thought processes. Thought processes. So the 3rd house, very direct. Thought process, information, knowledge, because it's changing. It's all synergizing, sending and receiving data. That's the flexible cadence, slash mutable. That's air. So it deals with those kinds of thought processes. The 7th house is this is a little bit tricky, but the 7th house being what? Cardinal. Meaning that we are direct towards it. We pursue it. It's an important part of life. It deals with everything that's interpersonal. So agreements. These are thought, like what's the right thing? What's the fair thing? It rules things like justice, morality, fairness, agreements, doing the right thing. The golden rule kind of energy. Ethics, morality. Now the air houses can also deal a lot with relationships. You can even simplify it even more and say air could be relationships. 3rd house is all the relationships of all everyday communications. Again, mutable, changing, right? 7th house, what are the cardinal relationships? Well, they're our closest relationships, our partnerships. And the 11th house relationships, again, so 11th house being fixed with values. So what is our highest values with relationships? Collective values. Collective values. The future, the world, the community, the contribution, groups, things greater than ourselves. Thought process also, right? So fixed thought processes, ideals, future visions, fixed ideals, 11th house. And then water, your 4, 8, and 12. So the 4th house being cardinal. What are water things that are foundations of life and that we have to pursue? Home, roots, foundations, family. The 8th house. What are values that are... Okay, so water, let me back up. Water, it seems very common sense, but water is emotional, is the way I would put it into a word. Emotional. So emotional foundations, home. Emotional values, 8th house. Again, looking at the pattern, it's in the middle of the 7th and 9th, so you know that it's a fixed house. You know fixed deals with values. What are water values? Water values. Right? Deep emotional connections, intimacy, trust, sexuality, life and death, things that really matter, and just trust in general. If it can deal with, like I said, values like resources, when it's trusting others with interdependent resources, things we're relying on or others are reliant on us with. And then lastly, the 12th house. Ever changing, you know, because it's cadent. It's at the end of the quadrant. It's at the end of the quadrant. You know that that's ever-changing. And it's water. Ever-changing water. Could sum it up as deep emotions, spirituality, psychology, our ideals in the sense of dreams, deep emotionally important ideals. The 11th house, mental ideals. 12th house, emotional ideals. All right, so that is the fundamentals of the houses. I'm going to go and open up to questions. When you say planets, you mean the sun and moon too, right? Yep, Karen, that's right. Yep, sun and moon as well. Sun and moon as well. We just call them that in astrology. So basically, you know, planet would be anything that is not a star or constellation. If it moves, even the north and south nodes, we'll call those planets in astrology. Not, you know, not scientifically accurate, but. All right, so Johnny B, apologies, I'm late. I was looking on YouTube and couldn't find this. Checked my email and clicked on the link. All right, good. Yeah, glad to have you, Johnny. Will this be on the channel? I'm not sure if it's going to be all in one. It's probably going to have to be in snippets because this is just, you know, a webinar, so I'll have to be put into snippets. But yeah, once that's done, I'll probably upload that. 11th house empty means not worry about the world. Cash. Maybe. It just means that the world and collective and global matters aren't going to be important life lessons for you. They will be at certain times, and you have to look at your transits for that, but I'm talking overall life energy, overall life. All right, Laurel, you stated that trines are the same element. Are squares the opposite element? Oh, in terms of the squares between elements. So the squares, remember, are modalities. So you're going to have one of each. It's a really good question. You're going to have one of each because they're a modality. So if we take the square of the first and fourth, we know that's the same modality. So it's a square because it's the same modality, but it's always going to be different. Always going to be different elements. And in fact, if you want to get technical with it, it'll always be an opposite polarity. So if fire is yang energy, then squares are always yin. Water and earth, 4th and 10th is yin, and that squares the 1st and 7th, which are yang. Fire and air, if you want to get technical with it. But just simply put, the modalities, one of each. So if it's a square, it's a modality, you know there's one of each. So it'll never be the same. So the 11th house empty means, oh wait, I already read that. Oh, okay, it's posted twice, okay. Positionally. Okay, that might be referring to someone else. Journey to home. Yeah, let me know if you had a question about that. All right. Snippets would have been great. My signal keeps glitching. Oh, the connection's bad. Well, the charts, yeah. So just, you know, the charts, I'm going to keep the chart fixed here. But yeah, I do my best to talk about which house or sign that I'm mentioning there. All right, so Christina, this is not a question. I've read there are planets that make no connection or aspect to any other planet. How is it that possible? How do you look for that? How is that possible? That's not good. Oh, if they don't make any connection. So, okay, so that opens up the idea of aspects, which we can look at. So these trines and all this. Well, in Western astrology, we give orbs to aspects. What that means is it has to be within a certain number of degrees of a square or of a trine or of a conjunction. It has to be a certain number of degrees from the exact relationship. So we're not quite into aspects, but let's cover it. The square is the 90-degree relationship, for example. So when something is at exactly 90 degrees to another planet, let's say in Matthias's example, his moon and his Chiron, it's not exact, but it's close. It's about 1 degree. But when it's at its exact position, that's a perfect square, 90-degree relationship. Then usually squares are given an 8-degree orb. So anything 8 degrees on either side of that, wherever that exact position is, if it's outside of that 8 degrees, in Western astrology, they won't call that a square. So some planets just won't have aspects because they're not within orb. They're not within a certain number of degrees to what would be considered that aspect. Yeah, unaspected. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Now, even simpler. The hard part's really pretty much done. Everything from here is downhill. What would be easier than me saying everything you just learned about houses applies to the signs? It's the signs. It's the same exact thing. Remember the difference though. Houses are the what and signs are the how or the adjective or the quality. Right? So let's start with Aries. So Aries is the one associated with the first house. Now remember, these are going to be in different parts of your chart. You might have Aries in your 10th house. You might have it in your 1st. You might have it in your 4th. Matthias has it in the 5th and 6th. So Aries is the same color as the first house. Now this is why you don't really need to memorize the symbols. It would be good to do it, and that's what the PDFs are for, but you don't really need to because everything's color-coded. If you know what the first house represents, cardinal and fire, just color-code it. Aries, it's the same color. This symbol here is Aries. I'll kind of keep it here in case there's some glitches. Aries. Same color, red. You don't even have to know that it's called Aries. Obviously the PDF will show what the symbol is, but you don't even have to know that. All you have to know is this is first house energy or the first sign energy, which is what? Cardinal and fire. So now that you have, so this is very important. Now that you have an understanding of what the houses mean, all you got to do is color match. And guess what? It goes in the same order. Look at the same order. Red, Aries, red, this one. Then brown or orange. Then yellow, which is the 3rd house. This is the 4th house sign. This is the 5th house sign. Now, if you want the names, they're in the PDFs. I'll say them here as well. You have Aries, Taurus, so it's all in order. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and Ophiuchus. I merged them together because they share the same part of the sky. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and then Pisces, if you want the names. But for interpretation, like I said, you don't actually need that. Don't actually need them. Obviously, you'll want to know them if you're going to, read charts for someone else and describe it. But honestly, it's the symbolism that matters, not what we call it. Ophiuchus is the same as Scorpio. So even though the color is black here, consider it the same color as Scorpio. They're both associated with the 8th house. Okay? They're both associated with the 8th house. So let's talk about Ophiuchus because I know some of you want to know about that. So looking at the fundamentals here, what's the 8th house? So pop quiz, what's the 8th house? What's the modality? And what's the element of the 8th house? Not what the interpretation is, but what's the modality and what's the element? Type it into the chat. I want to see if everyone is on the same page. Type in the chat what the 8th house's modality and element is, based on what we covered. Okay, there's a lag, so I have to come back to it. But anyways, going back, so while I wait for that, let's go back to Scorpio and Ophiuchus. So Scorpio and Ophiuchus are similar energies. They overlap each other, but they are a bit different. Scorpio deals with bringing things to the surface, particularly emotional things. Again, it's associated with the 8th house, and it's about values. So it's, oh, look at all these things, these values, these things I enjoy that I'm bringing to, that are emotional, that I'm bringing to the surface. That's what Scorpio does, the 8th house. Water values. Hopefully I didn't just give it away, but I think you guys probably typed it in by now. And then, so Ophiuchus takes it one step further, and Ophiuchus works with the deeper dimensions. It's the serpent bearer. So it's the person wielding and holding a serpent. And so this represents healer energy, healer archetypes, working with the emotional realms, the things that have been brought to the surface, the deeper emotional values, works with them. Roles healing, psychology, the shadow aspects of life and of the human experience. Medicine. Right? So in Matthews' chart, this is who he's destined to become more of. Right? Remember we said the rising sign is what's increasing. It's who you're destined to become in the world, in society, in your life. For Mattheus, it is Ophiuchus energy. Consider whatever's in the first house to be stronger for the rising sign. So you would say his rising sign's a blend of both Scorpio and Ophiuchus, but because Ophiuchus is actually in his first house, I would say his rising sign is Ophiuchus. So life is helping him. The rising sign is what life helps us develop. Life is helping him develop his Ophiuchus healer energy. Okay. All right, good. Everyone got it. Awesome. Nice. Beautiful. All right. Yes, the house of transformation. Right, because what happens when you start diving into emotional values, right? You transform. That is what happens. Okay. So there we go. So a little bit there on Ophiuchus. But again, just think of it as 8th house energy for now. There is a video on Ophiuchus that if you just type it into YouTube, you will see the video there. But you can watch that anytime. Okay, so color coding. Starting with this red one, which is Aries. So now, next question. Let me see how I can do this. Okay, so this symbol here, hopefully it's not glitching, but this symbol here, which is a lighter purple color. Actually, this may not be the best. Yeah, I already said it, so let's just stick with it. So this one here, this purplish symbol here, what is the modality and element of this sign? And as a bonus, if you happen to remember, or if you happen to have the PDF, what's the sign called? What's the name of this one? But more importantly, what is the modality and the element of this purplish sign here? Let me see if we're on the same page in regards to the houses and signs. Okay, so we'll come back because again, there's a lag. So you see how simple this can be? It doesn't have to be so complicated. It is. It like I said, it takes years to get into the interpretations. But knowing what fire means, what earth means, what air means, you can even just simplify it even more and just say, if anything is in a fire house, or let's say a fire sign now that we're talking about signs, if anything's in a fire sign, it's going to represent someone who's passionate, someone who's independent, someone who is direct. You could just interpret that alone. Obviously, adding the modality to it is going to give you more information in the case of this. So we'll go ahead and, I think a lot of you have probably already typed it in by now. This is Sagittarius. Sagittarius, it's fire. All Sagittarians, all Leos, all Aries, all the fire signs are passionate, are inspired, are direct, are great leaders. Fire. Sagittarius is also mutable. So, just like all the mutable signs, you could simply say, if you have any planets in this constellation, that you need flexibility in your life. Right? You need freedom. Sagittarius. Freedom to expand your horizons and your perceptions. And that's it. From there, you can start to draw upon your intuition, combining what does it feel like. This is a really good practice. Spend some time, put down the PDF, put down the books, and just go through these at some point. Let's call it the homework assignment after we're done here, or next week or whatever. Let's say today or tomorrow. Sit with the energy. Sagittarius. Cardinal fire. What does that feel like? What does cardinal feel like? Which is the flexible energy. What does fire feel like? It's the passionate energy. And just sit and feel it. This is the proper way of using astrology. Back before, these books, Vedic astrologers didn't even write any of this stuff down. The reason is because you really can't put this stuff into words. We try to say Sagittarius is about freedom and adventure and all these things, but these are just words that are trying to point towards what the fundamental means. But we can never really describe into words and conceptualize fully these fundamental elements of life. But we can feel them. Feeling the modality and the elements will give you everything you need to know about that sign when you need it, when you're interpreting. And you'll see it in your own chart. You'll see the parallels there. All right, so now is the assignment. So I'm going to say the assignment, and then I'm going to check the chat. So the assignment here is analyze your big three. The sun, moon, and the rising sign. Analyze it. You don't have to type it into the chat, but if you have a pen and paper, or if you're just watching this, go into your head and just kind of describe it. Describe the sun sign, which again is the qualities, the adjective that describes how one's outer personality is, how one expresses themselves, or how you do, let's just say, how you perceive life. I like to think of the sun in the sign as the lens through which we view life. So for Matthias, sun in Pisces, views life through the lens of Pisces. What is Pisces? Cardinal water. What is that? Deep emotions, intuition, right? So his personality, adjectives, intuitive, perceptual, soul-guided, creative, imaginative, spiritual, receptive. Boom. House, sun in fifth, the whats. What things that are our fixed / values. So our values that we're passionate about. So for Matthias, he focuses on the things he loves. Maybe it's his creative time. Maybe it's his hobbies, his interests. And guess what? If you want to take it another step, how does he do that? In the Piscean way, through connecting to the ethers. In fact, some of his passions and the things he loves and his enjoyments are probably Piscean things, spiritual in nature, or involve alone time, or more intuitive, or more imaginative, or more creative. Boom. Moon, inner personality, side that comes through at home. In the 8th house, Matthias, attuned. Well, let's go in the same order. So sign first, let's just say. It doesn't really matter which one you do first. But let's say Moon in Cancer. Inner personality, what is Cancer? So, or you know, didn't even know the name. This symbol here, what's the symbol? Okay, that matches with the 4th house. What is the 4th house? Cardinal, which means foundations, things we pursue, and water. Okay. Moon in Cancer, protective, creating a secure environment, attuned to his deeper emotional needs and to the emotional needs of others. Right? These are just my words I'm using to describe it. But that's the kind of process there. Right? The hardest part about astrology, once you get the fundamentals, is to try to put this stuff into words. And that takes time. But you can still get tons of useful information in the meantime. Moon in the 8th, attuned to what? Deeper values. Transformation, healing. So Matthias is at home. Maybe he likes to dive deep with things. Maybe he likes to research, bring things to the surface, connect to the deeper aspects of life. How does he do it? In the Cancerian way. Through creating a protective environment for him to do that. Through diving into his feelings and feeling into the deeper realms of life. Boom. And then you have the rising sign, which has no house. It's only the sign. Matthias, as we said, life path is to develop more of the Scorpio energy, which is just like that 8th house, which is the side of himself. But then again, sign is the how, it's the adjective. Well, his depth, his intensity, his deeper connection to life, his mysterious side. That's maybe how others might see him. But for him, it's just really about connecting to the deep truths of life. What really matters, authenticity, in the sense of what's real and raw, energy. And he's destined to become more of that, particularly the Ophiuchus energy, destined to become the healer, not only to work with the deeper dimensions, but to heal with them or through them for himself and others. All right, let me check the chat. So let's go ahead and see if we have some questions. All right, so let's see the Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, yep, fire, mutable. Yeah, not cadent. So, or no, cadent, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, cadent fire. That is right. The technical term is, for the signs, is the first set of words that I gave you, cardinal, fixed, mutable for the signs. The technical term for the houses is angular, succedent, and cadent. But that's neither here nor there because that's just technicality. Mutable fire, cool. So yeah, you guys got it. Nice. All right. Yeah, read charts intuitively. I mean, that is the idea. It's at least as long as you understand the fundamental of what these mean, then that is where your intuition can soar. Just, draw what you need as long as we stay within the framework of the fundamentals. Kelsey, do sun, moon, and ascendant energies blend? Someone with a sun in Aquarius and a moon in Gemini would have quite different values in way of being than someone with Aquarius sun but Capricorn moon. Right. Because we're not separate. The sun, although represents our outer personality, and our moon represents our inner personality, and these are different sides of ourself. We are a blend. We are a singular conscious entity who is a blend of these things, right? So that's the next step. You understand someone's sun sign, someone's moon sign. What is the blend of those signs? Like, what does that feel like, right? What does it feel like to have a sun in Aquarius and a moon in Gemini? Okay, focused on Aquarius things, feeling like learning, right? You can see how now that you have the fundamental, you can go as deep as you want with this stuff. Now, once you have the framework. Is your ascendant rising sign more about how you appear to others? Great question, Laurel. So normally in Western astrology, the ascendant is how you appear to others. In true sidereal, I haven't seen this to be the case, with the caveat that if you've been developing what life's been helping you to develop, i.e. your rising sign, then yes, but it's not a given. It's not a given. What the rising sign is showing more so is not personality. It's not how you appear to others. It's not your persona. It's nothing to do with your personality as much as it's what life's been helping you develop. It's a huge distinction from tropical astrology there. It's what life's helping you develop. And then maybe, oftentimes, very likely, because you're developing these energies of the rising sign, you're going to become more like that rising sign, but not necessarily as you might appear to others, like in the tropical chart, which represents your persona. All right, you guys are asking really good questions. This is good. It's kind of filling in the gaps here. All right, so journey to home, foundational, emotional. Yeah, maybe that was in response to something. Root of the chart. Oh, MC and IC. Leslie was asking, MC and IC. Okay. Right, so we talked about the rising sign. So let's talk about the other angles. Remember, angles are not personality, but they represent what life's helping us develop. So you have your rising sign, which is the ascendant, which is what is increasing, life's helping us develop. Well, what's opposite that? The descendant, the western horizon. The symbol, it's not on this chart, but the symbol for that normally is DS, descendant. So you have ascendant, descendant. Ascendant's rising, descendant setting. The descendant represents where we're in a sense coming from, but receding from, is one interpretation. So if we're becoming, in Matthias's example, he's becoming more of the blue energy of, called Scorpio. He's becoming less of this orange energy, which is the second house energy of Taurus. He maybe was born with more Taurus energy, but as he becomes more Scorpio, the Taurus might be decreasing. Having said that, this is ultimately about balance. We don't want to lose touch with our descendant energy. And in fact, our relationships are very important for that because we value it. We enjoy it. You can think of the descendant also like values. It's what we value and what we value in other people specifically, because the seventh house being relationships, it comes through relationships. So we do want to find that balance. And by connecting, for Matthias, by connecting with other Taurans, it's going to help balance him out because life's helping him develop so much Scorpio, the deeper. So the earth will balance the water. Now the midheaven and the IC, these can be anywhere between, for the IC, anywhere between the second house and the fifth house, and for the MC, anywhere between the 8th house and the 11th, depending on how far north or south you are from the equator. Now, the sign here is the most important because it's always going to be somewhere at the top or bottom of the chart, respectively, right? So the MC is similar to the ascendant in that it's what life is helping us develop for the public. You could think of it as your legacy. What is your legacy in this life? So midheaven in this example, green energy, which I'll just name it, it's Virgo, deals with Matthias's legacy is to do things that facilitate things for others, the Virgo energy, to improve, to help others improve, to refine things, to create systems and structures for others. That's his legacy. It's the future. Just like the ascendant's kind of future energy, MC is more future, but the MC is more public, the ascendant's more personal. So if the MC is future public legacy, then the IC is receding, just like the descendant. It's our past. It's our roots. It's, as some might say, is the gateway of the soul, where we came from from a past life. But it can also represent a lot of home energy. We can see a lot of karmic energy from home and our roots. Again, receding, but we do want to find that balance. We do want to balance whatever it is that we're pursuing with our legacy and our achievements with what's important to us on a soul level, which is the IC. And our home can help us always balance out that side that wants to go achieve and strive out into the world. Our home and our families can help keep us rooted in our IC. The easiest way of thinking about the angles is the ascendant is first house energy. It's personal itself. Seventh house, relational energy and values. Values and others specifically. Seventh house, right? Which is relations, agreements. The IC is associated with the fourth, which is roots, home, past. And the MC is associated with the 10th, which is about achievement, but in this case, legacy specifically. But again, they can be anywhere, the top or bottom there. All right, so it gives you a little bit of additional information there in terms of the chart. What is your legacy? What is your, where are you coming from on a soul level? Since the ascendant is in the first house of self, would it be more of how you interact with others, such as whether you engage like a Leo or recede like a Cancer? Yeah, so in a sense, it's your identity, but again, it's specifically the identity that life's helping you develop, right? That's the distinction. It's not necessarily the identity you're born with. Remember, the signs by themselves aren't personality. They're not shown in your personality unless you have a planet there. Unless you have a planet. The planet is the personality and life experiences, right? That was one of the first things we talked about. Planets are the personality and life experiences. That's why we go to those big three planets first. If a planet is retrograde, how does that affect its influence? Great question. So retrograde is more internalized. Now the only planets, so let me just put it simply. The sun and moon can't be retrograde, obviously. So these are, again, the fundamental aspects of ourselves. Once you get to Mercury and after that, you have retrogrades. And so this represents that side of ourself is more in an internalizing process. More reflective, more rethinking. They have to go within. So Mercury retrograde, for example, having to rethink, Mercury's thinking, rethink, recommunicate. It's almost automatic. It's more inward. So the challenge is how to make that conscious and how to actualize that in the world for a retrograde energy. So you just take the meaning of the planet, think of it as more internalized, more automatic, more inward, and that'll give you the retrograde's influence. Can you post PDF links, please? Yep, I'll post them again. Okay, just posted the PDF links again. What does it mean if I have a lot of planets in retrograde? A lot of internalization, a lot of inward processing, right? So just emphasize, but really but don't worry too much about the outer planets. If you're considering whether you actually do have a lot of planets retrograde, it's really only if Mercury, Venus, and Mars are retrograde. Those are the most important retrogrades because they're the more personal. Once you get to Jupiter and above, these planets are retrograde for half of the year. Jupiter's 4 months, Saturn's 5 months, but the outer ones are 6 months. So for a very large chunk of the year, half of the year, these planets are retrograde. So it loses its personal significance. But if Mercury, Venus, or Mars are retrograde, and if 2 out of 3 of those are retrogrades, then I would say you have a lot of planets retrograde. If you have outer planets retrograde, it's more of a collective thing. Everyone born in that half of the year will have those outer planets retrograde. Oh, thank you, Journey Toho. Christina. Oh, whoops. There we go. A unique blend. Okay. Okay, so yeah, hopefully I just talked about the MCIC there for you, Tori. Conscious beats, Virgo, Sun, and Moon. Libra, Moon, Scorpio, Ascendant, Neptune in first house equals mess and struggle. Not necessarily. So, challenging aspects, let me use a different word, challenging elements of the chart. Yeah, they can be more challenging to work with, but they are what creates the greatest strength in our lives, right? When we grow through these deeper energies, these more challenging energies, we become stronger and more resilient. And as time goes on, and especially later in life, what's earlier more difficult, like in our earlier years are more difficult, becomes a huge strength and a huge gift to the world as well. You know, some of the greatest gifts to the world are the more challenging energies. Scorpio, Pisces, Virgo, right? So you only look at the houses and planets, or planets, but not all three. No, all three together, if you can. If you can, all three together. The planet, as you go to the planet as the person, like to that side of their personality. What side of their personality are you analyzing? The sun, okay? Their outer personality, the way they express themselves. What is the house? Okay, interpret that. Then the sign, interpret that. Then, yes, blend all three together. The sign will show how you implement the energy. The house will be what you're implementing, or in the case of the sun, what you're focused on. So it's showing you that these qualities of the sign are coming through the house as well. Absolutely, absolutely. That's really where, the more that you work on interpretations, the better that will get. But if you're able to do that, absolutely, that is what astrology is being able to hold totally separate, sometimes even contradictory perspectives in a person and try to meld that into an understanding of who they are or what their life's about. Kelsey, what is the difference between North and South Node? Okay, the nodes. What is the difference between North and South Node, then the Ascendant and Descendant? Okay, another great question. So, the North and South Nodes, these are the horseshoe looking things. Super valuable to me. These are the most important part of the chart. They're not the most important in terms of personality. Those are the Sun, Moon, and the Ascendant, as we said. But super important in terms of it represents our life path and what is almost always going on under the surface in all of our life experiences. And perhaps more importantly, what is life helping us develop? So the North Node is the N-looking horseshoe. The South Node is the U-looking horseshoe. Now the South Node represents past energy, past lives if you believe in past lives, but also earlier in this life as well. The sign is the qualities that were associated in the past or past life, and the house is the area that was associated in the past life. Now, the way we feel the South Node in this life is very challenging, if not the most challenging part of the chart. And the reason is because we come into this life and we feel like it's missing or lacking. Because there was so much emphasis there in the past or past life, now we feel like it's missing or lacking. So it's a void kind of energy. The descendant's what's receding, but we value it. It's there. It's not, it's not a void. South Node is a void. It can feel like, inadequate. It can feel like we don't have enough energy developed there, whatever it is. And so we'll do one of two things. We'll try to pursue it. We'll try to fill that, so we'll try to pursue it and fill that void, or we'll just avoid it altogether and go into the complete opposite area of the North Node. All right, go into the complete opposite area of the North Node. So either push harder into the South Node, but what happens then, if we try to push harder into that void energy, life keeps blocking it and blocking it and blocking it until we get so stressed or we get so caught up in some karmic patterns, by trying to pursue it so much. But we don't want to just avoid it either. If we go all in the opposite area, we're going to lose touch with what's important to us on a soul level. So how do you work with the South Node? It's a paradox. The South Node should be arguably the most important part of your chart. In the sense that it should be the area that if you felt like it was completely, developed, that you would be the happiest person in the world. Right? So it's extremely important on a soul level. But the catch is that if you try to do it intentionally, if you try to pursue the South Node intentionally and directly, You're going to get like life is going to keep blocking you, like I was saying. But if on the other hand, you make peace with it for how it is, which is extremely difficult to do. Even with this knowledge, it's extremely difficult. You can get close to it. We never fully do it, but we can practice it through meditation and such, is to see the void that's in the South Node area and make peace with it for how it is, or more specifically, how it isn't. So if we take the example from Matthias, his roots, where he's coming from, was a lot of past life energy, let's say, was concentrated around home and family. And all that spiritual fulfillment and ideals that went into that with Pisces. So if he tries to pursue that home stuff, he may notice it gets blocked. So if instead he accepts and makes peace with how things are in his home life, or how they aren't or lacking in his home life, it's going to do two things. It's going to liberate him. So the South Node, when you do this, it's going to liberate you. And paradoxically, it's going to help the area flow more. It's going to unlock the area. And then the area starts to flow more. It's taking a more yin approach, a more receptive approach to it. Which just sounds totally contradictory because, well, like I said, you're supposed to develop your South Node, but how do you do it? In a yin way, by immersing yourself into the area, but in such a way that you've accepted it for how it is. And you observe the mind that might come up from time to time and may want to think about it or try to derive something from it or try to understand it. Making peace with it. Then it'll help actualize. Another way of looking at it is allow your automatic self to operate here. If this area was so emphasized in a past life, then allow your automatic self to operate here. Immerse yourself into it, but in such a way that you allow it to happen more automatically and you're accepting of how it is. Very hard to do, but that's a great practice. Then the North Node is where you can focus your energy and intention. It's all the new stuff that wasn't developed in the past life, the complete opposite area. For Matthias, it deals with career and work and achievement in his public life. But that's where he can push himself. That's where he can challenge himself intentionally, yang energy. Great to do that. But we, like I said, don't want to go all into the North Node either. So at the end of the day, this is about finding balance. So balancing the South Node and the North Node. We don't want to go to one extreme or the other. We want to see how we can integrate both. For Matthias, it's about balancing his home life and his career life, his private life and his public life. And with whatever it is he's involved with, if he can find a way to integrate both in the situation, he'll probably find the most fulfillment with it. Maybe he wants to work from home. Maybe he wants to work with homes. Maybe he wants to work in such a way he's protecting and caring for something or people or something. Combining the South Node, the North Node. That's the idea. But in the way that I described it. Challenge yourself with the North Node. That's the new stuff, completely different from what you're used to. Daunting, but life's very much supporting you and exploring here. And the South Node making peace with it as best as you can. And immersing yourself into it because it does need to be, involved in your life. All right, cool. So back to the chat. I'd love to okay, so we went through that. What does IC stand for? Imam Coli. Imam Coli. That would be what it stands for, but again, just recognizing that it's that fourth house kind of energy. So because the sample chart has no plans in the 7th, he will never have a legal marriage? No. Again, Christina, it doesn't mean you're not going to have that area in your life. It just means there's no major life lessons for Matthias around agreements and relating. I mean, let's look at his chart. I mean, Venus is somewhere. Venus represents relationships. We're going to talk about these middle planets soon. We all have Venus somewhere. We all have the rulers, which we'll look at. Rulers of the 7th house are all somewhere. So it just means that there's no major life lessons around this area as a general life, energy. There will be certain times, and he will have the area developed, off and on throughout his life, but it's just not a major life theme for spiritual development, let's call it. Oh, thanks, Merrick. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Let's see, Kelsey, but at the same time, the last half of the year is more yin and inward anyways. Yeah, maybe last half of the year might be good for the South Node. Anthony Matthews' chart, the ice sheet looks like it's almost exactly on the boundary between two signs. How would you interpret this? Yeah, so I'm going to say that's more Pisces. The reason is because his Sun and Venus are in Pisces. So like I said, if there's planets next to the conjunction, in this case, I wouldn't call this a stellium because the IC is not a planet. But in this three-way conjunction, I would say it's definitely drawing more on Pisces, especially because it's closer to Pisces. But let's just say it wasn't, and you're asking, how would you describe the blend between Pisces and Aries? Well, Pisces and Aries both deal with the independent self. Pisces is the spiritual self, the inner self, and then Aries is the identity, the outer self. So if that was his IC, he would be coming from a life that was both about cultivating his spiritual self and his physical ego self. So his, sense of identity, both spiritually and ego or physically. All right, Laurel, house, planet, sign. Is this a good order for reading a chart? I would go planets, big three, then either house or sign. So I would go directly to planets, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, you could go through the whole, if you want to start with houses, go through all 12 houses, you could do that, just as long as you recognize that, the big three and where the planets are going to be more important areas of development. All right, so Christina, that's my problem. South Node, conjunct Mercury, overthinking, over communication. Oh, maybe, could be, if it's South Node, yeah. Karen, what is it if the North or South Node or both are retrograde? That's their normal movement. Normal movement, they move retrograde in the chart normally. There's no real interpretation there. Some have, interpreted the difference between those two, but retrograde or direct, but I haven't noticed any significant difference. Marika, apology for not being active in the chat. I'm 15 minutes behind. Oh, okay, no worries. All right, these nodes definitely quite a journey of experience to get to know all this. Yeah, nodes are very, very deep, very mysterious. My North Node and Sun sign are both in Taurus. Isn't that pretty contradictory? No. It means you focus on... Oh, I see what you mean, but with the South Node? Right, contradictory because of the thing. Right, so with this, it's that because it's a conjunction, and remember, conjunctions are blending of energy. You have to ask yourself, what does it feel like to have the blend of the void energy and the sun energy? Well, it means that in the past life, you probably did deal a lot with sun energy. Anything next to the South Node, even planets. So obviously there's houses and sign, but if there's a planet there, right, it's this kind of blend. So you can read it as if your past life was highly emphasizing sun energy. You may have been an entertainer. You may have been very much focused on your passions and who and what you love in life and expressing yourself in some capacity. Maybe you're a public speaker or something. Maybe you worked with kids or, something you're very passionate about. So that's the energy that you are making peace with, is sun energy. And then when you do that, it's going to activate your sun. Like I was saying, all things associated with the South Node void, when we make peace with it, it then actualizes it. Then you're able to express yourself when you're not thinking about it and immersing yourself into the things you love and not trying to make something of it or derive something from it. Hope that helps. The South Node is what I want to develop, but isn't my sun how I express myself already? Right. So hopefully I just answered that. So it's more about how you're doing it. So Marika, but I would love to hear your take on the Black Moon Lilith, Pallas, and Vesta. Do you include them? I don't, but it's not because I don't think they're valuable. It's just that I like to stick with the fundamentals. Like I said, it's that 80-20 thing. There's literally so many asteroids, so many stars, so many planets. They're all useful. You can derive information from them. But the most important would be first of all, the ones visible from Earth on a conscious level. And then obviously the bigger the planet is, which is our major planets. Not even just bigger, but just, play an important role in our lives in some way. And in the solar system, or however you see that in the sky. Oh, thank you, Conscious Beats. Yeah, you're very welcome. Very welcome. All right, so Cash 2012 North Node in Ascendant. Yeah, so that's what you're there to develop. That's more direct. So kind of like Tori was saying, is more of a contradiction. That's more challenging for her. For Cash, North Node and Ascendant in combination, it makes it quite direct that that's what you're supposed to develop. You're supposed to develop that sign. And whatever house the North Node's in, 1st or 12th. That is in reference to retrograde. Okay, water fixed, deeper values, sun. All right. Okay, so we're caught up on the Q&A. How are we doing on time? We've actually spent already 2 hours. Yeah, people are starting to sign off because it's getting a bit late. So how do we want to do this? So this is it. I mean, if you just focus on the houses and signs, starting with the planets, you're going to get, like I said, 80%, if not more, of the valuable information that you need. After the big three, what you can do is you then go to Mercury, Venus, and Mars, which are your interpersonal planets. So the sun and moon are the fundamental outer inner personality. Mercury, Venus, Mars is how we relate. Mercury deals with how we communicate, how we exchange with others, and also process information and think about things. Venus is what we value, also how we relate, but in terms of what we want to attract to us. It's what we value and want to attract in our life. And then Mars represents the direct, when we need to initiate something in an interpersonal situation. We need to be direct, assertive, and a go-getter. So you're just reading those in the same way that you read the sun and moon, but in the context of that planet. Mercury, Venus, Mars, interpersonal. Mercury, communications, how we think. Venus, what we value, how we connect. Mars, how we take action and assert ourselves. Those are what's called the personality planets, or the personal planets. Everything up to Mars. Then you have the outer planets, or before the outer planets, a better term would be the middle planets. So you would have Jupiter and Saturn would be your middle planets. Now, once we get to this point of the chart, it doesn't represent so much the personality. It's a much deeper side of the personality. So Jupiter represents more of how we perceive things. Not so much like the sun, but more of like, what are our beliefs? What are our beliefs in life? This is Jupiter. And particularly the beliefs that we think are going to give us more inspiration. Saturn is what are our beliefs that we need to work hard towards and develop in life through time and patience and perseverance. The middle planets deal with creating our reality. Jupiter creates the reality by expanding our horizons. It's the kind of new age idea, which is believe it and it will become true. That's Jupiter. Saturn is work hard and you can achieve it through time, through patience, through hard work. That is Saturn. So they represent not so much our personality, but more of how we perceive how things can be manifested in our reality. Then you have your outer planets, which is Uranus and Neptune. And notice how everything's going in polarities. Sun and moon, yang and yin. Mercury's neutral, androgynous. Venus, Mars, yin and yang. Jupiter, Saturn, yang and yin. And then we go, same thing, yang and yin. Uranus, yang. Neptune, yin. but these are very deep. These are what you might say is a link to our true self. Uranus is the yang side of our true self that wants to disrupt and induce change, to have more freedom and do things that are more in touch with our true self. Neptune is the connection to our true self that is more about finding more peace, surrendering what's outside of our control, understanding that everything's part of a sort of cosmic process, and to feel our way through. Yin energy, feel our way through. Right. And to let go, surrender, and we'll be exactly where we're meant to be when we're meant to be there. So again, not personality, but whatever the house is, that's important. So for Matthias, when it comes to his resources, second house, he probably has a Neptunian approach. He probably approaches his resources in such a way that he might be wanting to give, might be more selfless about it. Or he has some sort of ideal, like Neptune, some ideal about resources and how to cultivate that. And then with Uranus here, he needs to mix the area, change it up, disrupt it from time to time so that he can have freedom with it and induce change with it. And then you have Pluto, and before some of you really give me backlash for this, Pluto I don't believe is an actual planet that was created during the creation of the solar system. Because of its very tilted orbit, I think at some point Pluto was probably an outer comet in the outer edges of the solar system, and he got he's probably very large, and he got trapped afterwards. But this is important because planets were made during the creation of the solar system. Pluto, Chiron, all these other bodies so the asteroids would also be here during the creation, but they're modified. But when you're talking about comets, which is like Chiron and what I consider Pluto to be, these are the ones that deal with transformation. They don't have a polarity. Notice how all the planets have that polarity, right, except for androgynous Mercury. Pluto, elliptical and very tilted orbit, very significant of a comet. That is now a dwarf planet, or whatever you want to call it. It is a planet. We call it a planet in astrology for sure. But it's different. And the difference is that comets are messengers. They're here to give us a message from the outside. And in the case of Pluto, it's that we must let go of all these worldly attachments in order to be free. Because Pluto is the last, planet we look at in the astrology, it's said that in order to pass into the afterlife, we have to pass through Pluto, the deepest recesses of our consciousness, or the deepest part before the center of our consciousness. And in the physical sense, once we leave the solar system, we have to pass through it. And so it deals with that eighth house energy. All comets deal with eighth house energy, which deals with having to release attachments so we can connect to the deeper value, the deeper emotional value. So Pluto is how we transform and where we transform through. Chiron, this is the K symbol. This is where we heal and where we heal through, where we can face wounds with and also heal through. But again, start with the most fundamental, Sun, Moon, Rising, work your way to the personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, then to the middle planets, Saturn, Jupiter, and then outer. And you don't even need to do that. If you only focus on the big three, and let's lump in the personal planets there with that, you've got over 80% of birth chart analysis. Just focus on the house and sign. Now the aspects, all they're showing you is the angular relationship between the planets. That's all they're showing you. That's all they're showing you. The red ones are more challenging. And again, those are the modalities because they're very different. They're different elements, remember? So those are the areas, anything red is the areas that they're just in very different energies, right? In Matthias's chart, this is in all of the value houses, the fixed houses, properly called the succedent houses, which is about the different values of life. So for him, a huge theme, and this is what you guys are saying in the chat as well, is what do these symbols in the middle mean? Like these aspect configurations, the ones that really pop and really stand out like he's got, this Grand Cross. It means there's a challenge to integrate these different areas of life. How do you incorporate your material values with your deeper values? That's challenging. Or your personal values and others' values. That's always challenging for everybody. And how do you balance so these are the oppositions, the ones that are across 180 degrees. Those are more about balance, but I'll talk about the square more in a second. So the other opposition is part of the T-squares between the 11th and the 5th. It's red, so it's challenging. It's about having to balance what we were calling his passion values, things he loves, with his future collective values. This is also very difficult, right? What we enjoy, what we're passionate about, but then what does the world need? Or what is the world instilling on us in regards to what we should do? How many times have we heard that? Should I do what I love, or should I do what society, I mean, we don't really say it this way, but it's like what society has instilled in us, right? Very difficult to do. So for Matthias, it's the challenge to integrate these 4 very different values of life. Material values with deeper values, with passion values, things he loves, with collective values in his future aspirations. And if he can find a way to challenge himself and to integrate these, which I'm sure he has, and it only gets easier, the challenging aspects only get easier through time as well, but they're great areas to challenge yourself. To integrate, think of squares as integration. Same with oppositions. We need to integrate. We need to bridge the gap between very different parts of our life. And then again, the house will show you that. The sign can also show you that, and the planet can also show you that, depending on the perspective. But remember, don't read aspects as a thing. We don't see them. All they're telling you is that these cluster of planets over here are involved with very different things from this cluster of planet over here, which is very different from this planet over here and this planet over here. So it's just telling you that it's more challenging to do that. Or if it's a trine or a sextile, it's easier. It's easier. The blue ones, right? The blue ones. There's a synergy. There's a harmony. Again, same element. And that goes without saying, right? It goes without saying. Water, water. In that terms of both sign and houses there. And then, like we said, conjunctions are a blend. That's when they're next to each other. Those are also aspects, but those are a blend. You want to blend those energies. And how do you read all this? Well, start with the most personal planet first. How do you read it? How do you read this all together? Start with the big 3. Start with the big 3. So for Matthias, we could start with the sun or moon. Let's just start with the sun. Pisces, 5th house. We analyzed that already. It goes without saying that that's very different from his moon in the 8th in Cancer. Just by describing sun and Pisces in the 5th, it goes without saying, it's implicit that that's very different from his moon in the 8th in Cancer. You see what I mean? You can almost ignore the aspects because just by describing where they are in the chart, it's going to be implied that it's challenging because of how different the energy is that you're describing. But the aspects are there for you to see. But if you ever get confused about aspects and you're trying to read them, start with the most personal planet first, because that's going to be the perspective. So the main perspective of this whole Grand Cross is from the sun and the moon. And let's pretend that wasn't his moon over here. Let's say it was just his sun and let's say Mars was over here. It would only be from the perspective of the sun. And you want to read it from that perspective first. The big 3 could never go wrong. Analyzing everything from that perspective. So it's the sun, the outer personality, that's getting a square from Neptune and Uranus. And from what would be Mars. And then Chiron is opposing the outer personality. All in the context of the outer personality. But in the case of the moon, because it is the moon here as well, you could also read it from the perspective of the moon, and both would be equally valid. And you probably want to do both. Of course, this brings up the point of lunar cycles. We're all born during certain lunar cycles. Matthias was born during the first quarter lunar cycle, which is a square, which is that his outer and inner personality are just very different. And that life is helping him integrate the two. Right? Again, it all comes back to the fundamentals. All right, guys. So, so I think this covers it. This is it. If you can do what we talked about today, I'm telling you, you can read any chart and you can get tons of information from it. Obviously, through time, you want to develop your skills further, sure, read some books, go through some videos, go through the PDFs. But the most important thing is you understand the fundamentals of what the planets, houses, and sign means. And from there, everything else comes together. And just remember the most important ones first. In terms of, you don't have to read them first, but, just recognize that they are the most important in the personality. All right, so I'm going to go through here just to make sure I've answered all the questions and see if there's any questions that could be helpful for everybody. But before I go, I did want to mention that, so for everyone who stuck around for this long, so this is a long webinar, 2 hours, I'm giving you all a huge discount on the astrology course. So if you haven't already gotten the astrology course, I'm going to put the link here in the chat for a 50% discount on the video course and a 25% discount on the one-on-one course. Now, I almost never give discounts on the one-on-one course because it's, it's one-on-one and it's already discounted anyways. But yeah, so I'm going to post that here in the chat for those who want to go further with it, of course, because there's always more you can explore with astrology. But yeah, everything covered here today should get you all up and running and developing your own skills in interpreting each of your charts and others as well. All right, so yeah, so let me go through here though. Let me answer any final questions and then we'll say our official goodbyes. So let me see where I left off. The thing with YouTube is it always changes where I left off in the chat. I can't see where. Okay, here we are. That is in reference to the retrograde water fixed. Okay, deeper values. Yep. Okay. All right. Aloe. Great teachings, Athen. I hope this gets reposted. I have to sign off. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Aloe. You're probably gone by now, but we'll see if we'll post this. Conscious beats with the asteroids and other planets. The issue is overload of information added to. We don't know what we don't know yet. Athens, very right. Basics first. Yeah, just stick to the basics. If you want to add asteroids, sure, but yeah, don't overload yourself. There's already enough. Look, you got to combine 3 things that are the fundamental things in life. Planets, houses, and signs. Like, good luck. Like, I can't, no one can fully do that. We can get close, and that's where the skills come in. But yeah, just stick with the fundamentals. What do you see in the sky, especially? Conscious beats. I got so lost in all that before. Haha, endless information, and we aren't sure what's proven and not to begin with. Yeah, right. It gets very confusing with all the planets, but once you simplify, you know what to look at first. It's super helpful. Tori, this is great. Yeah, that was a quick 2 hours. Yeah, did fly by. Sanaz, how can I read the chart for the upcoming week for myself, like you do every week? Yeah, just go to the online chart calculator, type in whatever day you want to look at. If it's for a weekly, then just make sure you're looking at anything but the moon, because in a week, the moon's going to be moving quite quickly within a week, but all the other planets will be, for the most part, probably in the same locations for that week. So the sun moves about 1 degree a day. And the fast-moving planets, depending on their speed, between 1 and 2, or some with Mars would be half a degree a day. So yeah, just go to the online calculator, masteringthezodiac.com/chart, or just masteringthezodiac.com. There'll be links there, and just pull up the chart for that day. You can do your own interpretations. That's all I do in those daily and weekly videos, is just the birth chart, so to speak, for that day or that week. Cool. Thanks, Conscious Beats. Yeah. Christina Athen, may I have the PDFs of today's sent to my email, my computers? If you send me an email, Christina, just shoot me an email. That way I have a record of it. And it's just easier for me. But yeah, I'll send you the PDFs. Yeah, if anyone has, wants something, feel free to email. If you can't find the PDFs or you have a question about something, Debilitation, exaltation, and fall. The best thing with this is just simply feel. So this is what's called strength in Vedic astrology, or what would be called dignity in Western astrology, which is what sign and house are the planets most comfortable in, and which ones are the least comfortable in. What sign and house are each of the planets most and least comfortable in? So the sun, for example, very much likes to be in Aries, so it's considered exalted, right? It's an easier energy to work with. It also loves to be in Leo, where it rules, so it's in domicile. So all these words about, the dignity and the strength, really what it comes down to is what we talked about today. Feel the energy. Sit down. What would it feel like to have the sun, which is this fiery energy, in Aries? It would feel great, right? It would feel great. That's all you need to know. Sun in Leo, great. Sun in Sagittarius, also great. Sun in Pisces, I'm not saying everyone with Sun in Pisces, is having, challenges with it, but that is more difficult, for example. Sun in Libra, more difficult, because it's about, you're sitting here trying to relate. So the sun just wants to shine. You have to relate with others. So once you feel the energy, you get all the information you need, plus more. Because all debilitation and fall and all this dignity stuff is about just recognizing whether it's easier or harder for a planet to be in that sign or in that house. Well, with what you're asking, in that sign. But you can do it for house as well. And just sit with it. Does it feel like the sun would like to be at the top of the chart in the 10th house? Well, yeah, right? So midday, the sun's the strongest, right? So the sun loves to be in the 10th house, for example. Right? So, and there's just a bunch of gray area in between that too. And it's, again, not about like, oh, it's good or bad here. It's about what aspects of it are easy, what aspects of it are challenging, right? But you can only get that from feeling what it's like to have that planet in that sign or in that house, when you know what the fundamental is and you feel it, and go from there. So that's what I would recommend. Again, everything we covered today should get you there. All right, so Karen, this is so awesome. Thank you for this. I learned so much. It's driving me crazy that I can't use the chart calculator. Can I purchase the chart from you? Anyone who's watching or part of MTZ Insiders, just send me an email with your birth details, and I'll be more than happy to send you your chart in PDF form. So if you can't pull it up from the calculator, because it can be glitchy sometimes in terms of how it's used, in terms of the user interface, because it's not that clear and that straightforward. And sometimes it does just fail because it's overloaded at certain times. Yeah, so if you can't get your chart, just shoot me an email sometime. I'll be more than happy to send it to you. All right, Kelsey, if a sign has no planets in it, does this mean the energy of this sign is underdeveloped, or that it has already been developed in past life? You could say it's maybe been developed in a past life, but again, it just most importantly means that it's not a major life area of development that life's really challenging us to develop. It's just not major spiritual growth lessons around that sign. There will be when there's transits, like we were saying, in certain times, and you can certainly have that. We're the whole zodiac, we are the entire zodiac. We're all 13 signs. It's very important to remember this. So just because you don't have something in a sign doesn't mean you don't exhibit those qualities either. But I would say they're not underdeveloped necessarily. They're just more of not needing to be developed as much. They're important to develop if you can develop them, but they're not like underdeveloped because there's no planets there, in the sense that you need to develop them. But maybe, there's theories out there that we really do need to incorporate the whole zodiac, and anything that incorporates all the different elements, the better. So if we can become the whole zodiac, then that's, that would be the ideal. So it just depends on the perspective, but just remember that it just doesn't mean it's a major area of life, spiritual challenge of development. Conscious beats, Karen, clear cookies. Yeah, maybe clearing cookies would work. Yeah. Chiron retrograde. Chiron being outer, again, retrograde for half the year. Not that significant, but just take what Chiron means, like we're saying, more inward, more reflective, you'll get that. Is it true that squares are challenging, trines are smooth? Yeah, covered that. Squares more challenging to work with. We want to challenge ourselves would be great. Trines more smooth, but also where we can get lazy. So we still do want to incorporate trines and sextiles. Those are the blue ones. All right. With transiting planets, that would be a separate topic because you need to compare both charts. So maybe one of these days we'll do a transiting planets webinar and predictive astrology webinar and go into it. But in terms of birth charts, yeah, that's pretty much it. It can grow from here. That's the important thing. You're very welcome. Very welcome. Conscious Beats. Thank you. That was excellent. You're welcome, Anthony. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Johnny B. Tori. Thank you, Tori. Kelsey, you're very welcome. Thank you. Awesome, guys. You're very welcome. I'm glad you guys got some value out of this. Also, Tori visited Portugal last year for a couple of weeks. Loved it. Yeah, Portugal's great. Beautiful. Very chill. Just a great place. Thank you so much for your time. You're welcome. Sanaz, thank you. Anita, thank you. Good. Glad you understand it better. All right, so we'll conclude this. Everyone, thank you again so much. So again, I'm going to put the links one more time so you have them. So first link here is going to be the birth chart calculator. So at any time, all technical challenges considered, you'll have them when you need it. Here is the PDFs with the extra information. And then lastly, the discount for everyone who made it this far and joined us today on the courses. All right. So everyone, thank you again so much and for all of your support. Yeah, let me know maybe some other ideas in terms of what you guys would like to talk about in MTZ Insiders. If we ever have a webinar like this again, any topics, anything, shoot me an email. You know, it's an open forum, so feel free to let me know. And yeah, wish you guys the very best. Take care. Thank you again. Bye-bye.